My name is Steve Ralbovsky. I work at RCA Records, which is a division of the RCA Music Group, which is a Sony BMG record company. I am the Senior Vice President of Artists and Repertoire, A&R for short, and responsible for signing artists such as David Gray, The Strokes, The Kings of Leon, My Morning Jacket, Rachel Yamagata, Ray LaMontagne, The Kills, Ben Queller, Matt Pond, and I think that's it. I started in college. I was the guy running the concert committee at school, which was Buffalo State University, and simultaneously was the music director of the college radio station and doing writing for student newspaper and independent music publications, as well as managing a band and playing music myself. So college was kind of a springboard into the industry as I made numerous contacts at record companies, booking agencies, and management companies in college. And I was hired out of school to be the tour manager for by a management company that was managing B-52s, Talking Heads, and so I got into the music industry first as a tour manager, professionally, having been a concert promoter and a music director and a journalist and a musician and a band manager in my high school and college days, and a disc jockey. So from there, I went into artist management and had my own small company, roster of artists that were signed to a few of the different major labels, and included among them were Tom Verlaine, who was signed to Warner Brothers, the Plastics, who were signed to Island Records, and the Necessaries, who were signed to Sire Records. This would have been in the early 1980s. And 1983, I was hired by EMI Records as an A&R guy in New York, and worked there for nearly a year. First signing was a band called Jason and the Scorchers, or then called Jason and the Nashville Scorchers, and was offered a position at Columbia Records, then a CBS Records label in 1984. Columbia Records for 3 years. Highlights include The Outfield, um, Def Jam label, which I brought to CBS, and that included artists such as the Beastie Boys, LL Cool J, Public Enemy, and many more. So worked very closely with those artists and kind of the early stages of hip hop, joining mainstream kind of record company affiliation. From there, career path took me to California, where I ran the A&R department for A&M Records. Signing highlights include Soundgarden, Soul Asylum, Blues Traveler, the Neville Brothers, and from there back to New York, where I worked at Elektra Records and the A&R department, and functioned as the head of A&R there for a period of time as well. And signing highlights there include Nancy Griffith, Ween, Anthrax, The Breeders, and from Elektra, Arista Records for a brief period of time, and then Interscope Records, and now the last 7 years at RCA, where the artists that I already mentioned are, things that have been done on my watch since I've been here. So that's 23 plus years of A&R at a variety of different record companies, both as the head of the department and kind of doing my own thing. So, well, the term itself, really, technically speaking, A&R means artists and repertoire, and up until a certain point where artists were really writing their own material, it was the name given to the person responsible for signing the artist, who most of the time was a vocalist, and providing the songs or the repertoire for that vocalist. So the name itself is kind of, since the kind of era when artists became, were writing their own material, and become archaic, but it's just kind of stuck. So, you know, before I was doing it, long before I was doing it, it had changed from being a vocalist dominated, artist roster to being a roster or label artist community made up of people that wrote their own material. Um, so you know, the time that and since the time that I've been doing it, it seems like companies, there's less of head of A&R at company. It's more like president functions as head of A&R, and individual A&R people are empowered to make decisions up to a certain point. When I started doing it, there was a person whose job it was to oversee specifically the A&R people, and that person then reported to the president of the company. It seems to be more now, whereas the head of the company acts as the final arbiter of the signing decisions and has a combination of scouts and experienced record-making savvy A&R people in the mix. I think also you've got more tools for research, more indexes, more online communities, more web-based research tools available for discovery than certainly would have been around when I started. And I think speed of information is, a lot more a factor these days than it was when I started. There's just a broader resource availability than there might have been then. And at the same time, the economics resulting from declining sales of recorded music have also made, the signing costs, it's had an impact on how many deals are done, how long a company stays committed to an artist, and how much financial resources applied to trying to break those signings through. Less signings, less time, less money um, to hang in there. When I started, it was sort of almost a given that you'd certainly get to make two records and probably a third, come what may. You'd certainly get a second single, if not a third single, released from every record that you put out. And these days, it's kind of one record at a time, one single cycle at a time before the company decides if they're going to kind of continue or not. Also, I think up until maybe 5 or 6 years ago, multiple labels interested in a band would kind of spend whatever it took to get the deal done. And I think a lot of people got, burned enough times in these kind of bidding war situations to be a little more cautious about it, even if it was something that a lot of people seem to want to do. So those are some examples of how it's different now than it was 20 plus years ago, or different now than it was even 5 years ago. It's kind of on the entry level. It can be research in terms of regionally developing artists and their building fan base, web-based, information to provide sort of, developing stories, scouting, going out at night to see bands. We work in New York or LA where all the major companies are headquartered. You're going to see a certain level of A&R person out, just kind of checking out 2 or 3 shows at night at the request of artist managers, music lawyers, music publishers, at the direction of more senior members of A&R staff. Up the ladder a little bit, your positioning and hopefully signing artists that you're excited about, that you think can do well, you have a vision and a plan for, and you are working with maybe the senior most people in the department to try and cast the recording scenario with respect to producers, engineers, mixers, if outside writers or collaborators need to be part of it, that element too, until you kind of gain enough experience over time that you're able to kind of comfortably look to the producer, engineer, mixer community and make those casting calls, maybe have 3 or 4 or 5, meetings with different candidates for your project, review the songs that the artist would write and record in some kind of demo fashion, discuss which songs would be recorded for the record, who best to record, produce, studio, best location to record. And, then, sort of at the top of the food chain, there may be a head of A&R, although I think that's sort of less and less these days, but there may be a kind of a senior most person in the department that acts as a filter for the president of the company that helps to manage the flow of any number of A&R people within a company, either pitching to get a group signed or looking for, input and feedback, oversight on making of the record. And, some people's role extends into once the project is signed, finished, recorded, and delivered, and hopefully has everybody enthusiastic, to then kind of be a bit of the shepherd, a bit of an internal manager for the project, a bit of a sort of a combination of enthusiast and game plan overseer, helping the artist managers with their relationships with the company, making a proper introduction, presentation of the music and the artist if it's a new signing, and having that 12-month a year relationship with the artist and the manager, where most of the rest of the company is kind of their time is built into what the release schedule for the current project is. So, some people are more successful or more comfortable being involved in the marketing of the records after they're done. Some people, it's a purely creative endeavor, and they hand it over to, the marketing department, artist development department, promotion department, et cetera, to kind of figure out the plan for selling, bringing the music to the public. Um, myself, I've always kind of felt like I wanted to manage the fruits of all that hard work. So that's that's me, but it's not everybody. Some A&R people, they like to spend a lot of time in the studio, and that's really where they're the most comfortable to kind of sit around and respond to producer, artists, what do you think about this, kind of particular creative issue. And some people, kind of want to get updates every few weeks and on how their records are going. And so everybody's got a little bit of a different sense of style, and every company's got a little bit relating to the question about what people do and don't do within a company. I mean, some companies are more territorial than others about what A&R's role should be after the music is delivered. So you kind of have to find a balance. But I've always felt that you're kind of making these little movies that you should have a hand in how they're presented. It's a broad network, and after building up a broad realm of contacts over many years of doing it, it really can come from anywhere. It can come from a manager. It could come from an artist. I find that the best suggestions are usually the ones that come from other artists, where, an artist that I work with tells me about another artist that they've heard of. And those are the ones that, I often find to be very rewarding. It can be agents and music publishers and attorneys and internal scouts that, you hire to basically provide you, early information on new and developing artists. It can be music publications. Certainly, there's a lot of web-based resources um, as well. And basically, I think it's a lot of it just kind of comes at you because it's become a smaller community of A&R people as companies have consolidated, have merged and come together and consolidated. You know, you can go, as a manager or an artist looking to get their music heard, you can get your hands on the list of who's who at record companies and that, what projects they work with, and you can kind of get a sense of where they're where their musical, interest lies and pinpoint it, and it kind of comes to you. I've always listened. I've always, felt that I have a responsibility to listen to everything that's come my way. A lot of companies have policies with unsolicited material, and I just feel like if somebody's gone through the trouble of tracking me down and getting me music, I want to listen to it. But it's a broad network of, you know looking at a trade publication and, ordering 20 or 30 records that might be on independent labels, from a college radio airplay chart to uh, internal scouts to, managers that I've built contacts with over the years. All different places it comes from. Well, it makes information a lot more readily available. You can instantly get a sense of what the artist's touring history is, what their local following's about, how they visually represent themselves. Artist web pages and MySpace pages in the current realm, um, give you i- full spectrum, instant information. Whereas, pre-internet, you'd have to rely on a press kit, or, kind of getting on a plane if you were that committed to go and see a show or meet people. Now you can really develop a quick take on band's personality, their sense of style, their sense of taste, by how they represent themselves in their own, web environments. You can get all manner of information on the story so far. You can listen to their music instantly. You don't have to kind of wait on your music being put in the mail or sent to you 2 or 3 days later. It's a much more rapid availability of information, and the ease of it is just, you know it's all right there at your fingertips. So just it speeds the information and discovery process greatly, and I think, um, people through the web, will email their music, and that's something that I see even more in the very current climate, is that people, rather than burning a CD and sending a CD or sending an MP3, and I have everything go on an iPod instead of carrying around, it used to be bags of vinyl, shoulder bags of vinyl records. Then it was shoulder bags of cassettes, and then it was shoulder bags of CDs, and now everything's on one little iPod, that is mobile and plugs into car or home stereo or headset, or whatever. So, but the web has definitely made access, um, to information, a lot more speedily, readily available. Well, it's different, it's really different in every case, and it can be in the very rare instances of, well recommended, from trusted contacts, office performance, and instant, this is something that has to be done, let's do it, which has happened. It can come from, you know, there's something here, but not convinced on the first go around with respect to live performance. Let's go another time, and still not convinced, but other friends may say, you know, trusted friends may say, you gotta keep, you gotta keep thinking about this, and then, a third time or a fourth time maybe does the trick. So it can be impulsive. It can be really thought through. It can be, I'm not sure, but maybe here's a little bit of seed money to just keep writing and keep recording and keep coming back to me with new songs. And if the quality of the songs continues to evolve to a point where there's now an undeniable, reason to sign an artist, it can go that way. There are some things that, that you just, and you will not be denied, whether it's your boss or any, the world at large. You just have to have it. And then there's other things where, you want to have some feedback from colleagues. You want to have, people, there at the beginning with you that might work in other areas of the company, whose instincts you trust, you might want to say, what is your take? And you come out to a show with me. What do you think? And it might help push you over the edge if you're just not sure about one particular aspect or another. So you have to be careful when you're looking for consensus or when you're looking for even a small community of people because, you know, the opinion that you don't want is going to be the opinion of record. You know what I mean? It's like if somebody says, I'm not sure, it might make you say, well, it might make you say, well, why aren't you sure? I want you to be sure, but if they're not sure, then you're almost better off to not have asked in the beginning because then it can kind of make you think, you know, get you confused about it. So it works in all different it works in all different ways, really. It can be studied, it can be impulsive, it can be community, it can be singular. Everything just takes on its own set of circumstances. Well, usually, I mean, every company is different, but everybody has somebody that is a boss to them, and you go and you kind of lay it out, and you make a compelling presentation. And for someone like myself, it's who's been doing it for a long time. Uh, it usually goes from there to let's see what kind of a contractual proposal the representatives of the artists would put together, and it goes into kind of a discussion with company representatives and artist representatives to try to come to commercial terms for a recording agreement. For me, it's really is there a commitment to absolute kind of the being the best that they can be, that there's an absolute dedication to the hard work that's required, that there's a commitment to doing something unique, that there's a kind of an X factor to the charisma, just something that it's either there or it's not there. And you should never talk yourself into thinking that it's going to be there. Often this sort of X factor or it thing, this aura, whatever it is, precedes the songwriting development or the musicianship development. But you know, that's the thing that you can't go to school for. That's just something that some people are born with, and most people aren't. You cannot make it up or design it or go learn it somewhere. Um, a unique character in the singer's voice is always something that I think stands people apart. Intelligence and emotional impact in lyric writing, an ability to perform emotively, if not perfectly, musicianship wise. Um, I always get, kind of a twinkle with people that are just a little irreverent with the system and the way things are meant to be. That's always something that kind of appeals to me, and a timelessness to what the music is, as opposed to a trendiness or a sort of fungibleness. This is something that could have worked 50 years ago or 50 years from now. Those are the qualities that I look to. It's nice to know that there's a local story, but that doesn't always travel. You um, and just the willingness to sort of separate the work from the hobby, and that it's something that you have to live in pretty challenging conditions financially, and be willing to kind of do that, and also be willing to do the work yourself up front, not just sort of be completely dependent on a company or your manager to kind of do it all, and you're just going to kind of write songs, show up and play gigs and go to recording studio, but that you're not afraid to call other bands to put shows together, or just make stuff happen on your own. That's an important quality too. So that's a lot. I mean, that's why you start to sort of go through all the criteria, and by the time you get through the end of that list, it describes something that doesn't come around very often. Well, I think it gives the developing artists less of an opportunity because you've got companies combining their rosters, combining their staffs, it's harder for it's harder for people to have a long career trajectory, a longer career path. Um, and the currently successful top line artists are the ones that are going to get continued attention, and the developing artists are going to have a harder time of it. So uh, it's survivalism on the corporate level. Companies feel that they need to join forces with their former competitors to have enough of a market share to continue to have the stock price that the corporate parent company needs to keep its investors happy. And in the middle, you've got an artist community that feels like they maybe aren't being supported for a long enough period of time to break them through. And at the bottom, you've got new signings that are trying to make extremely competitive records so that they can compete within their own family. Shrinking CD sales and slow to make up the gap digital sales are at this particular point in time, conditionally speaking, kind of driving the notion of merger necessity and all that comes from that with respect to shrinking staffs and shrinking spends and shrinking signings as well. So um, one side of the coin is the best people survive, and the other side of the coin is that the baby goes out with the bathwater a little bit too. So you know, what hasn't happened, which was a kind of a prediction, that this would all give rise to a new level of kind of a mid level of or bigger independent companies kind of you know coming into it, but it doesn't seem to really have been the case. You have to live it, you have to believe it, you have to have a really really work hard. It's got to be distinctive. You have to write and sing and play very well, and you have to be willing to keep at it. And it's better, I think, to kind of develop outside the spotlight until your body of work is as strong and your performing ability is as confident as it can be. Because once that first impression is felt, it's very difficult to get a second opportunity to make that sort of first impression or turn around a bad first impression. Um, so don't talk yourself into something that's really B plus. Don't try to tell yourself it's A, and just realize that you've chosen an endeavor that has a tremendously high rate of failure, and you just really have to do this because you feel like it's a calling, or you can't do anything else, or it chose you, kind of thing. And X factor isn't something that you can practice, and very, 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 very few people get to be a combination of talented and successful. So be honest with yourself. Developing outside of the major cities of New York and LA is probably a good thing to do, to get a local following where you can be playing for receptive, attuned fans, where you can get honest feedback on new material, develop a clear sense of what the best of your material is, develop your regional touring outside of just your hometown to try to get pockets of fans so that when you do get signed, there is a pre-built, even on a microcosm level, awareness for you to develop your web strategies with respect to your homepage and your MySpace page, and just try to develop a sense of what music writers around the country for national publications or major city daily newspapers where their taste tends to lie, and maybe surgically kind of pinpoint a few of those people. Make sure that the way that you visually represent yourself is extremely well thought through and developed. That um, I think the way that people sort of, stylistically or visually present themselves, whether it's, high style or, low style, just like a developed kind of visual presentation, I think is very important in terms of catching someone's attention. And then it just gets back to the basics. Is that voice really distinctive? Are these songs, can these songs take your breath away? Is this one of those one in a million things, because that's kind of what it really does come down to. Different people think differently about the criteria, certainly. I'm just giving you kind of some of what mine are. It's a very challenging field. There are fewer opportunities in the major label level. Um, it's very competitive. Uh, Once you're inside and at a company. And I don't know that if I was 25 today, which is the age I was when I was offered my first job, I would look at it the same way. Um, it seems that a lot of people getting started in A&R today reach a sort of an artificial ceiling where they basically have been scouts or information providers to people above them who make the signing decisions and make the record-making decisions. Um, and it's frustrating. It seems that the mentorship that existed when I started, in terms of learning about producers and mixers and studios, and doesn't seem to be there so much, anymore. It's become kind of a top-heavy A&R decision making at the top level of the company, and a lot of the A&R departments are kind of, for one reason or another, for one name or another, basically scouts, you know. So it's hard to kind of grow from being an information provider into a record maker, much less a manager of your project's destiny uh, after all the recording part is done. But it's a challenging business, and it's almost a lot of the same advice that you asked me to, or that I talked about giving to an artist. It's a lot of the same advice about being on the other side of the equation in the A&R in the A&R realm. It's often who which is not something that you can make happen if you don't know. I think you know any kind of college background in music or the arts with hands-on experience, concerts, radio, publications, use those experiences to get introductions to people, make a clear presentation of yourself, live and breathe and sleep and eat the music 24/7, learn the history of the music, learn the traditions of the music, just immerse yourself in an education process so that when you are afforded the opportunity to talk to someone, that you can, evidence an awareness of where it all kind of came from and how it all kind of fits together, and just it's like a live and die music kind of thing. It's not for the hobbyist. It really has to be for the people that just have to do this. It's like I said before, some kind of a crazy calling, and just be out seeing music, be in the smaller record stores, discovering staff recommends, you know, from a listening post, read the more astute online publications and printed publications, and just be an ongoing everyday student of the music and the culture and the lifestyle. And it doesn't hurt to have good taste, and you know but you've got to try to find a way to get networked into uh, someone's contact list or get a meeting, and that's the random and difficult part of it. My way in was the college experience. For many people, it was the college experience that led them through college radio to some college department at a major record company, or someone's concert experience in college led them into a booking agency, or you know work with a management company. And then from there it's just that making yourself well thought of by doing good work, showing good taste, having the right personality, and being able to work hard and put the time in and be a likable sort of person who really knows their music.